You have been told many lies of Middle-earth.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another episode of the Rings of Power. A lot of stuff happened in this episode. I'm going to say that every week because a lot of stuff does happen in episodes of the Rings of Power. So, hi, I'm Nat. Hey. And I am here with Sam, of course. Hey, Sam, what's up, bro?
What up, peeps?
And we got LT.
Greetings and salutations, my people. What's going on? I'm in the building.
Yes. You're like, I need in on Rings of Power. Thank you. We have a third.
Yay.
All right. So, like I said, a lot of stuff happened. There was a lot of pettiness. There were a few awesome fight shots. Arendir, again, had an awesome moment like last week. He had an awesome moment this week with the arrow. That was beautiful. I was like, he caught it and he shot it. I was like, yes. That was super cool to watch. Yes. So I want to get a sense of what was your favorite scene or what story arc were you like most trying to pay attention to? Like which one were you trying to like really take notes on? And I'll start with Sam.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like the story arc that has my actual heart is Elrond and Doran. Like everything about their relationship and how tragic I think ultimately their relationship is going to end up is what really has me. Whether it's like the wife trying to cover her man, whether that's Doran like adhering to what Elrond is saying and believing him, and having him make the oath on the rock, or even the conversation that Doran had with his dad. Like that whole story arc, I think, is one of the things that sparked me to be like, in the second episode of this series, I was like, you know what, this could actually be really good. Because as much as like action is cool, score is cool, cinematography is all that, you got to be able to grab me with the characters. And I think that they're my favorite arc, period. Now, the most exciting arc is definitely the son, Arondir, and
Bronwyn.
the mother. And like everything that's going on with them is exciting. But yeah, those are my two.
Okay. LT, what are your thoughts?
Well, first I gotta give a special shout out to Alex Tarrant. Alex Tarrant is also plays Valandil. He's the one that put the hands on Isildur after he got him kicked off the boat. My man went all the way back from Middle Earth to regular Earth to his Hawaii 5-0 character and pulled up and punched that dude square in the face. And I thought he had it coming. So shout out to my man Alex Tarrant for that. But the story arc, I have to agree with Sam on the Elrond and Doran story arc, especially even their relationship as it's been reforged and the impression that it's going to at some point break apart. At least that's the impression I get. And all the things that underlie with that, like, when we go back to Lord of the Rings, we know what happened with Khazad-dûm, and I think we're kind of seeing early signs of that. And I really want to see how that affects them. We also, and the introduction of Mithril, which I'm sure we're going to later. The other storyline that I find also interesting, that's actually caught my attention between the end of this episode and the new episode, this current episode, is Halbrand, Galadriel and Halbrand, because this reminds me so much of Aragorn, being that lost king, all the way up to Return of the King. Here we now have another person who is apparently the king of the people on the bad side, and he is, like Aragorn, is trying to escape that because of what has happened in the past. So I find that storyline interesting as well. And those are the two that kind of catch me at the moment.
The Galadriel arc is interesting. She kind of irks me a little bit, just I think because of her approach to things, which is very different from what we remember in the movies. Even with The Hobbit and, you know, even with The Lord of the Rings. So just seeing her like this is kind of like, Galadriel, girl, calm it down just a little bit. You're overdoing it, and it's just turning people off. But like Halbrand said, it's like, look, you need to slow your roll. This isn't, you're not in a war here, not yet anyway. Like, you're not battling an army, you're battling other humans, and obviously you have not been hanging around humans often enough to catch the body language and the tones these people are saying. Like, you need to back up before we have hands. Like, this is not the way to do it. But she did wind up getting her way at the end of the day, because as soon as she started leaving, the leaves from the trees started falling, and the Queen Regent was like, oh, you know what? Let's switch it back a little bit. Let's
move
switch
that
it
back.
back.
I'm reneging real quick. I got a penalty, but I'm reneging.
But I also have a feeling that her decision is still going to be the downfall. Like, that decision is still going to bring about it's the course is set. It doesn't matter if she had let her leave or if she had, you know, rolled out with an army to Middle Earth. It still would happen. Like, it's still going to happen. So it's just a matter of when. Now, did her now with the decision of bringing Galadriel back so they think they can go back to Middle Earth, did that delay it, or is the timeline still like super set? That's the question that I have, and I wanted your thoughts on that. Do you think it's set, or do you think they have a little bit of a window? And do you think that she should at least warn people, so at least as many people as they can escape, so then they can at least survive that catastrophe?
Yeah, I kind of took the vision as not so much like this is because they helped her or not, or helped the elves or not. I felt like what this was is like, it's a prophecy. Like, if you look at Encanto, right? Like, it's showing something that's gonna happen, but it doesn't mean that it has to be the end. It could be that, okay, we know this is happening, let's prepare ourselves. Let's refortify. Let's either move or let's change it. I think what's going to end up being the case is that if they had have let her just leave and just ignore the situation or ignore the vision, they came into the details of, like, if you're making this decision based off of fear, then you're already damning yourself no matter what. But by taking this approach, I think that, of course, it's still going to happen because war is coming. Like, it could be a situation they might break apart the dam and the water's going to fall anyway. I thought it was really interesting shot showing the waterfall. I was like, eventually that's going to break, but it may be a situation that they're better prepared for it. So I've always looked at it, that was going to happen irregardless of her helping her. I agree completely with you, Nat. But one thing with Galadriel that I thought that the way that I took her character, and I'll use this picture as an example, is that this woman is dealing with decades and decades of trauma. She's got the soldier's mentality. She's not allowed herself to feel. She's not allowed herself to even see humanity or even her people in any way, shape, or form. It's just been the fight. And that has been the thing that has driven her. And so anybody that is war-ridden for an extended amount of time, they lose sight on why they're fighting to begin with. You know, and then it's kind of like this chip on their shoulder. It's like, no, you know what I've been doing this whole entire time, why I've been fighting. There's a scene in, I think, the movie, what was it, Brothers, with Jake Gyllenhaal and Tobey Maguire. And like, Tobey Maguire is going off, but the reason why he's pissed, and it's not even so much that the wife did what she did, it was more so like, do you know what I did to get back? Do you know what I did? Know what I fought for to give you what you should have? And I think that's her mentality. And I think she just needs tact. She needs time to recenter. But she still hasn't dealt with her trauma at all. And I think that's why she's in the state that she's in versus where we see her later on in the movies. But that's just my approach to her, and that's why I've been kind of like less frustrated. But I get you, because I've seen it. I'm like, daggone girl, can you just shut up for a second? Like, you're making it worse here. But but she doesn't have a bone in her body with tact and in that kind of emotion. She doesn't have the patience for it because it's been so much anxiety because of the war that she knows is coming.
All right, LT.
All right, so I wanted to I agree with all your statements. I wanted to kind of touch on a couple things. So if you all remember back when there was the impression of there being that the new Jedi in Star Wars, The Force Awakens was going to be black, and people went nuts until they found out it was Rey and all that.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of prepared ourselves when we got the rumors of moving forward now to The Little Mermaid, when we got the word that Halle Bailey was going to be the new mermaid, and we knew some folks were going to be a little tripping on that. So we prepared ourselves for that. So I agree with you. I think this time they may have prepared, Numenor has prepared themselves, or at least the Queen Regent has prepared herself. But I think this is something where, they tell you there's 3 types of trouble. Trouble you create, trouble that others create for you, and then trouble that you just can't avoid. I think no matter what's decided, this is trouble that you just can't avoid. And I think no matter what happens, we may see the end of Numenor. But how they handle it and what they do is really what's going to be the factor. The other thing that we have to remember, especially when it comes to Galadriel, is we're seeing, I can't pronounce her first name, but we're seeing Clark Galadriel. What I'm interested to see is that moment where she goes from being Clark Galadriel to Cate Blanchett Galadriel. Because our Cate Blanchett Galadriel, you never got the impression that she was this warrior. And she had this chip on her shoulder because of her brother. And all she does is see the fight and want to take down Sauron. We saw her as this peaceful queen or peaceful representative of the elves who has this little thing in her that we thought was because of the ring she had that turned her into where she still has this yearning to be a ruling queen, like we saw how she changed in front of Frodo. But I'm wondering if she's going to have that Elrond moment that changes her to that. Because we saw in the first Lord of the Rings when Elrond told Isildur to cast the ring into the fire and he didn't, that to me is what changed Elrond when it came to dealing with men and dwarves and everything else. He was just like, I'm kind of done. We did all this stuff and you wouldn't do that. He lost his faith then. What's going to happen that's going to transition her from this warrior to the Galadriel we know from the Lord of the Rings saga? That's what I want to see. But I am in agreement that no matter what was decided, they didn't have a Doctor Strange to do all the million routes to find out how they can save Numenor and avoid that. So I think no matter what happens, Numenor is going to go down. But how I still don't have the impression that they have the gift that Aragorn has, because Aragorn is a descendant of the Numenor. And he is like 80-something years old, but he looks like 45, 50 or something. So when do they get that gift? Do they already have it? Or is what she's doing now taking Galadriel to Middle-earth, and the actions that they do maybe cost them Numenor? And as a gift for what they do in this series, they become the Dunedain. They become those humans who are able to live long years as a blessing from the elves. That's my thought.
Okay. I mean, I can definitely see both points, but I'm still wondering, did Muriel or Queen Regent Muriel tell anyone else about these visions? I'm getting the impression no, but I'm just wondering if she's done it in a roundabout way to try and prepare. I just don't know. It's kind of hard to tell. I think she's just been in denial for so long that if there was any preparation, it's been minuscule at best. So if anything, I do appreciate that the conversations that they had just made her realize, look, I need to do something. And what can I do to help to save as many people as possible? At the same time, we're going to fight this war. I don't know who's going to survive, but we do know some folks signed up though. So we see this shot, you know that ain't a good look. So in fact, it looks like the same place that the orcs were at this episode, and that is a good transition to the story arc of Arendelle, who managed to escape, and then my boy Theo just can't seem to catch a break.
I mean, well, let's be real. He didn't escape. Them didn't just let him go.
Yep.
I was halfway thinking he was gonna have like a cut mark on his chest or something like that. Like, yeah, nah, this is a warning. Look at his body. It's a warning.
Yeah, he was definitely let go to warn and pretty much say what he said. Like, y'all can live as long as y'all serve us, and that's a total lie. Like, come on, let's be real. They're not gonna hold that in the bargain. They're gonna use them as slaves, like they're already using the people that are already there digging.
Right.
Yeah, that's not a good life. Like, what? I live for that? Nah. But I think some people will take them up on that offer. The barkeep and probably Theo, even though he tried to escape him. And we did get to meet Adar. Is that his name? Adar?
Yes,
yeah.
Adar. And he looked kind of familiar. Sam and LT, we were like, what? Where we know him from? So Sam, if you show us, can you reveal to us where we have seen this actor from?
Bam.
Oh yes, Game of Thrones.
Uncle that become a zombie later on.
He upgraded from a White Walker to an orc, or part orc, part elf. I think he's part elf.
I definitely think he's part elf, part orc. Yes, that was the look at it, because the side of his ear, it looked like elvish, but then the other side of him, it was weird. And I said this last time, like he had this glove that I thought was Sauron's glove. And then the other one was just an open hand, which I thought was really weird. I was like, why does he have this glove? Is like, where did he even get that joint from? But so, it was weird. I don't know. Go ahead, Ty.
No, I was gonna say, I know who Adar is. Because I don't know if this is a spoiler or non-spoiler review, I don't want to go into the detail. But
I don't want to know. Don't tell me.
But so I won't. I will simply say Adar is a key aspect of the orcs, but that's about it.
Because they said, what was it? Arendelle asked, "Why did they call you Dad?" And then he said something along the lines of like, everything that you know is been completely mistaken. You don't know anything in so many words.
Yeah. But there is a reason basically that they call him that, and why he is different from the other orcs. Yeah.
I don't know if I want to know.
I have my theories. I just don't know if they're going to be right. There is the apprentice, so to speak, under Sauron. That could be him. It could be Sauron himself, or I just remembered the first episode where they went to the castle and they discovered, someone was creating orcs. Maybe that's him. I just don't know if Adar is the only name that he goes by. I think it was like one of the leader of the ring waifs. That could be him as well. We just don't know for sure, but that's partially where I'm thinking he's one of those people.
You're talking about the ring wraiths?
Yes.
You're talking about from Lord of the Rings, like the Witch Kings?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's not that, but yeah. But it's a very good guess, but that's not him.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So, he has what looks like the sword and the little plate that Sauron likes to wear. I just don't know 100% sure because we still have the stranger and we don't know who the stranger is. Although it was weird when Elrond was talking about his dad becoming a star. I was like, could that be your dad?
That's
Like,
the first thing I thought.
I was like, the stranger could be Elrond's dad and he just don't got no memory of it. Okay. So I'm not the only one that thought that. Okay, I'm glad I wasn't the only one.
No, that was my thought. As soon as he said his father was made to carry the evening star, I'm like, so the Valar basically made him a god. And then in the first episode, we see some dude falling out the sky, like, and is focused on charting the stars and everything else. I was like, yeah, that sounds like Elrond Pappy. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That sounds like he the paw that dear elf child.
That would be an interesting connection to. Oh, we got to talk about what Durin gave and revealed to Elrond.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go for it. Either one of y'all.
Hey,
ladies first. Ladies first.
No, I feel like LT should reveal it because he's the one that confirmed it.
He did.
What we were thinking it was. Of course, with no captions, but
so the previous episode where Durin and his father were looking at that box and it opened up and glowed, I thought at first it was those glowing stones from the Hobbit series that they obsessed over. But then when he showed him the ore and said, it's light and yet hard, and I was like, is that mithril? And sure enough, it was mithril. And for those that remember, mithril is the ore that made the vest that Bilbo wore in his adventures, and then he passed on to Frodo. And when Frodo got stabbed by the orc in Khazad-dûm, he didn't die because, he was wearing the OG mithril. So, so I was very excited to see, the mithril coat. I'm very super excited to see the ore actually finally revealed, and it also gives credence to how old or the amount of time between this series and Lord of the Rings, because they've just introduced it. So I was super excited. I was all giddy for it. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, because we didn't know. We were kind of like, what is it? Why are they hiding it? And then the fact that Durin actually gave him, because he was kind of like, he revealed it to him under oath, and he was like, here you go, you can take it. But he's like, no, you keep it. It's a semblance of our friendship. I was like, wow, that's deep. And he didn't tell his dad. I don't think he told his dad that he gave it to him. But at the end of the day, Durin fully trusts Elrond, and it's gonna cost him. It's gonna cost both of them at the end of the day. I don't know how it's gonna actually play out in between, but I know where it ends up at least. So that's gonna be interesting and tragic, unfortunately.
Well, with the discovery of mithril, is that what causes them to dig too deep, which causes Khazad-dûm, which causes kind of like you said, tragedy befalls at the discovery of this great ore that can protect them from this war, or be part of that protection against the upcoming war. So it's like we see it coming, but we got to get there. And we don't know if there are any twists and turns on the way to getting there. But it's just sad that is sad. It's not like a happy ending here. Even though it's happy in the sense that we see, Bilbo and Frodo wear it in the movies. Again, tying back to what we know and love, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And I do agree. I do absolutely adore the Elrond and Durin friendship. My girl Disa sang, and she had some pipes. And I was like, can we have her sing some more? Like, I want her to sing to the mountain and save, some more miners, or, just random, things happening in the mountain that's listening to her because they know that she got some pipes. So what did you guys think of that scene and like just overall? I know we kind of touched on it already, but what do you think that may play a role in the digging of Minthrill, her singing?
You good, Elsie?
Okay, so yeah, so I wholeheartedly agree. Like her voice, like I wanted her to sing. I wish we can go back in time and have her sing when Sheryl Lee Ralph got her Emmy. That's how good she is. Like she did her whole entire thing. The thing that intrigued me though is when she was singing, Elrond kind of looked off to the left and started seeing something. It looked like it was moving on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if those are the early warnings or signs that maybe with that explosion and thing that happened, they dug too deep and started to nudge or awake the Balrog from the Lord of the Rings series. Like, I'm wondering if these are the early phases, like you said, to bring, ironically, as you said it, Nat, Khazad-dûm's Khazad-dûm, So I'm wondering if those are the early phases, like what we're seeing are the first signs that, okay, they went a little too far and that Balrog is starting to tremble a bit. Because we've seen in the Lord of the Rings how and that's really what's intriguing me. Just like I talked about how Galadriel goes from Clark Galadriel to this transition of Blanchett Galadriel. I want to see what happens when that brings Khazad-dûm as we see it, this beautiful underground city, to what we see when they first enter in Lord of the Rings. Like that is a very tragic and drastic, transition to go from this beautiful underground city of wonder to the horror that we see when they first go in Fellowship of the Ring. So I'm wondering, when Elrond looked at the ground and saw that little movement, it looked like something was kind of either flowing away or whatever. Those are the early signs of the Balrog.
Yeah, I completely agree with Ty. I think honestly that what is his name? Adar, when he was having a conversation with the elf, and he was talking about your comprehension, there's roots on top of roots on top of root. Everything is intricately connected. And I feel like roots is a great analogy. Like you going underground and you're digging and you think everything's fun, but you don't know the darkness that you're digging towards. And they've already shown in the trailer that this he's coming. So I don't know how, but it's gonna definitely be connected to this. And it's gonna be visually stunning, but it's gonna be tragic because they're not gonna be prepared for that in no way, shape, or form. And I really don't know. I don't know if her voice is tied to it necessarily, but it's connected. It definitely is connected. Just the way that she has said something to Elrond when they first met about how they sing to the mountains, how they sing to the rocks. Like it is symbolic, and at the same time, it's connected. And so when things aren't working like they're supposed to, or things aren't in sync, much like what's going on across the sea, things are going to heads are going to start to roll, unfortunately. So I definitely think it's connected. I don't think she's going to be the cause necessarily, but I think it's connected for sure in some way, shape, or form. Well, I just don't know how he's going to come.
Well, we also have to remember they were in the same room that pretty much everyone made their last stand in Fellowship of the Ring. So I think orcs were a part of that. So is it going to collide at the same time as the Balrog, or is it going to kind of happen separately? Like does the Balrog come after? Like it's kind of like which is it? So it'll be really interesting to find out. And again, tragic when it happens, because it's like I love Disa, I love Doran. Like I don't want to lose them.
Right.
Yeah. I think what's really, just real quick, I think what's really got me puzzled is they've already seen in trailers and previews that the Balrog will be present. What's got me though is if we're going to see the end of Khazad-dûm or what happens, there's a lot of time between apparently when that happens and the Lord of the Rings. Like there's a whole Hobbit 3-part series that goes through that. And yet when we see the Lord of the Rings, Gimli is telling the Fellowship that, hey, when you come to Khazad-dûm, you're gonna get meat and salt, pour all this good stuff, and then he's shocked to see what happened and how Khazad-dûm looks when they go in, and it makes me wonder, how did this happen? Because if it happens around the time it's supposed to be at the end of the series, that's still a lot of time where there should be enough information being sent out to find out about what happened at Khazad-dûm. So for him to, Gandalf was clearly aware of it because he didn't want to go that route. But the fact is Gimli's not aware until they get there. So how is this even locked down to the point where the dwarves outside don't apparently even know what happened to their kin inside? So that's kind of, I want to see how they tie that together. It's kind of tripping me out.
Yeah, I agree, because that kind of threw me off too. I'm like, is this the Khazad-dûm? Is this the same Khazad-dûm?
Apparently.
Apparently, especially if they're hinting at it. Or was there just another mountain that we don't know about? But I feel like this is Khazad-dûm. So the structure and everything is very similar. So that's what I'm rolling with. Unless they're just really like, the timeline is just, they're just effing with the timeline. Like that's the only.
I agree that it could be that, because also remember the entrance to Khazad-dûm as we know it from Lord of the Rings is different from here, but yet it is many years in the past.
Right.
This is where we know how long the elves live, and Galadriel is basically a very young woman at this point compared to how she is in Lord of the Rings. So I'm sure with time a lot of things have changed, and I'm sure like HOTD, this may transition over the course of many years before we get to the culmination of this whole series. But I'm still very interested in how they're going to depict, if this is the same Khazad-dûm, which I think it is, the actual destruction of Khazad-dûm. Exactly. Great image, Sam. How do we get to this point? That's what we want to know.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, I really do think the roots, when that analogy, eventually the orcs are gonna make appearance in some capacity connected to this too. And there was something that Adar said to the elf when he said, "I'm not a god." He almost said they look upon me like that, but then he said something along the lines of "not yet. I'm not a god yet." So I thought that was really interesting how he went and did that. But yeah, it's all I think that's why I'm enjoying this, because continuously, yes, I'm reminded of certain things, but I'm just loving the lore. I'm loving it being expanded out. I'm loving the journey, I guess the best way to put it, to catch up to where we're at, where we're supposed to go anyway.
Yeah, they've taken a lot of they've made use of a lot of the freedom that they have, even though they're missing certain things, because I believe legally they can't use anything from the Silmarillion. So,
oh wow,
but yeah, although they do mention the Silmarils, I think it was either the first or second episode, but they don't have the legal rights to use anything really from the Silmarillion. So what they're utilizing is kind of like taking stuff out of the back from the glossary or the index and turning that into a story, which I think is very, very commendable of them. But I like that it gives them enough freedom to roam and really kind of put their creative process into it, which is why I'm really enjoying the series. Sometimes in restriction, you get to still, blossom and bloom your creativity.
And it's funny you should say that, considering how apparently from everyone else is saying, or at least the ones that are purists, at least a few of them, probably several, but they don't think like that. Like that, they're thinking the exact opposite. And it's kind of like, I know I had to get off my high horse, and I know I'm going to mention it, Sam, Wheel of Time. Like I had to get off my high horse. Like I had to really take off my purist hat and be like, okay, they're doing things differently. And now I can appreciate what they're doing, especially since they're trying to cover the entire series and not just certain books in the first season. So I think, and that's why, at least with the Rings of Power, I'm kind of glad I haven't read the Silmarillion and like Tales of Numenor and anything like that, because, and I mentioned it last week, because just this, I don't want to feel like they're like destroying lore. They're just doing a different spin on it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sam. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. Go. No, please.
No, all I was gonna say is that I don't have any weight in it either way. Like, only thing that I've actually done is seen the movies, and that's it. So it's kind of like, for me, all this, and I hadn't even seen the movies in such a long time. So when we got to the first and second episode, like, we had a conversation with Nat. I was like, wait, this character is who? Like, what? That's what? Like, so all this is refreshing for me because I don't have anything. I don't have any connection one way or another. Which some of you guys, y'all have read everything. Y'all do have like a deep connection with it. And so you're offended for, nonsensical reasons. But I guess from y'all's understanding, it's like you just don't want them to mess it up or to make up something. But for me, it's kind of like, this is all a ride that I'm really enjoying the journey with. But that's all I was going to say.
Yeah, I was going to simply say, I mean, to read these books, you're really kind of, I'll be honest, I tried to read the series and it was a tough read. I ended up resorting to an audiobook, and even then, and even now, as I'm seeing some of the subtle differences, or not really subtle differences, but the way they put their creative piece on it, it's actually helped me evolve into other series that I watch to notice, some of the differences and actually be more intrigued to find out why they went that way versus, oh, they went that way. I can't believe they messed up and destroyed the stuff. And, and actually I usually, like, when I first started looking in the Harry Potter series, because I read those books through and through, I did initially have that kind of thought, but then eventually I had to understand, well, when you see things play out, it's kind of like, oh, that's a very interesting way on how they did it, versus how it was done in the books. And you sometimes just have to appreciate people's creativity and how they stretch things out. I mean, the writers for the 8th season of Game of Thrones will never be forgiven, but sometimes you look at people's creativity and be like, okay, I understand why you went that route. That was great. True. But yeah, the writers of Game of Thrones will never be forgiven. I'm just going to say that right now.
Well, I feel like they're probably one of the few, and I think there's other shows too. Yes, Shannara Chronicles 2 was a hot mess. Like, they effed it up. Like, that hurt me, considering I actually read like the first few books of the Shannara Chronicles. I was like, y'all really doing that? Oh no, y'all just no.
I hadn't even read the books, and that second season was trash.
The second season was trash.
It was basura.
Oh my gosh. And it wasn't because, and yeah, that wasn't the reason why. It was just the way that some of the characters moved, and it just didn't make sense. It didn't really, I don't think it followed the story the way that it could have. Same thing with Aragon. They need to do a remake on that. I'm sorry. They need to, because so they can do the whole trilogy, because it's a good trilogy. And it's funny because I realized that years after I finally read the books, I was like, what? Because I actually enjoyed the movie initially. I was like, oh, it's not that bad. I read the book. I was like, don't work.
Yeah. Well, they're doing something similar with Percy Jackson, I believe.
Yeah, they are. I saw the
series off of that.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for the new Percy Jackson, and I actually did like the movies, and I did like. I mean, I do love that series. Like, I'm a big Rick Riordan fan. Like, I'm even listening. I've actually bought the next two books of the Tales of Apollo, and I'm gonna go through those because that's actually been a good series too. And I'm hoping this new series gives them a chance to really delve into the rest of the Percy Jackson series. But I also have to appreciate, even though they did some things, and I do agree with you. I do agree with you, Natasha, that they should. It would be nice for them to do. I wouldn't say they need to redo Aragorn. I think they need to give him his own series from his origins all the way up to when he first goes off to meet up with Frodo and the rest in the Lord of the Rings. Like, I think if we give, because I did love the series and I did read the books and I still think they did great with it. But I think because I've read the book, or at least listened to the audiobook, there are some key elements that they are missing that I think that they should put into his own series and flesh him out a bit to appreciate him more in the actual trilogy. That's just my thought on it.
Are you saying this is for Frodo?
No, for Aragorn.
Oh, for Aragorn.
For Aragorn.
I agree. I think his origin would be nice to see. Viggo Mortensen, I mean, he did bring the straggly beard, like the rough scruff look, like that. Just that was it for me. When the Lord of the Rings first came out, I was like, "Ooh, Aragorn, hey!"
He's an OG, man. He's an OG, and I think if anybody that's anybody that's non-human, non-elf or whatever, needs his own series, it's Aragorn. Because I feel like Aragorn is that one character that's kind of like Gandalf, just popped up out of nowhere, and here's the wizard. Here's this man, Aragorn, that we start seeing pieces of the onion peel back, and you're like, well, what's the Dunedain? What's Numenor? Why is he 87 years old looking like he's 45, 46 in the piece? Like, and I think Ring of Power is going to probably touch on that because, the truth of the matter is he's a descent. We're looking at his ancestors right now, Elendil and Isildur. He is their descendant. So I'm hoping that Rings of Power takes us to a place where we get to the point we see in the Lord of the Rings, which I think is what will happen. But if we could get a series in between where Isildur dies and we get to Aragorn and what happens there, because something happens that allows the people of, or at least Aragorn's line, to be able to live, extensive years like an elf, and I think that's what I want to see, because we don't have an impression from the series yet that Numenor, the Numenorians are like that right now,
Right.
Well, it's funny because another reason why I wouldn't mind an Aragorn series is I wanted to see the love story between him and what's her face? Like, that
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I just like, I would have liked to see that. It would have been nice to see. I mean, we got hints of it throughout the series, but it was like, and then they forced okay, I'm not even gonna go there with the Hobbit because that was just such a weak point and totally unnecessary. But but back to the show. I thought it was cool with the Numorians.
Numenorians.
They were like,
that's why I just went with that.
That one guy was super petty because he got his butt kicked by Halbrand. So he was like, oh, yeah, the elf is going to come back with her posse and they're going to try and take over, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, dude, be quiet. Just take your licks and go in the corner. Like, it's not that deep. You provoked him. Yes, he stole your thing. I get that. But it's not that deep. You got your butt kicked. Go on and lick your wounds and call it a day.
Did anybody else feel that racism he was giving off?
He was totally giving off that low key racist, because then he was like turning it around on Galadriel, who had nothing to do with that. Like, she was minding her business. Yes, she's here. He just happened to almost drown and got picked up. I mean, are you saying that? Okay, that hasn't happened up to this point, but I'm saying, have you never had someone wash up on your shore because they got lost at sea? Come on now. They may have been another human, but they weren't an elf. I mean, the same thing. Come on, man.
These are the people that don't like Obamacare but love the Affordable Health Care Act. The thing is, the Numenorians basically fought, and they were rewarded with this, and this is what gets me. They fought. They were rewarded by the elves by getting this island lifted out of the sea for them. And what do? They close off their borders and basically say, yeah, a lot of us died, so F y'all very much, and we're gonna close our gates and everything to you. Now we're to the point, it's actually almost like Attack on Titan. You got one side of people that don't want to be bothered, you got another side of people that stick to the old ways, and it just feels like there should be some giant coming through just tearing up all of Numenor right now. Because there are people that still stick with the old ways of, because the elves help them. And there are other people that are like, nah, forget the elves. We can, and it's just ego and pride that's basically leading to their own hubris, and it's always that thing of, if you don't remember where you come from, you'll always make the same mistakes while you're going. And I think that's what's going to lead to the end of Numenor. It's their pride. And like you said, regardless of what Queen Regent has decided, it's coming to an end anyway, because they have lived too long by themselves on this island, and have not only done that, but have purposely excluded themselves from the world. So now if something happens to them, who's going to care? Who's going to remember them? Who's going to tell their story? You know what I mean? It's just sad.
Yeah, I was about to break out singing Hamilton on that. Real quick, because we're probably going to close up shop in a little bit.
Yep.
Can we talk about Theo?
Mr. Theo.
And
Mr.
how
Theo.
I ultimately think the chip on his shoulder from the fact that his dad is absent, who we still don't know who his dad was, to him seeing his mom fawning over this elf, to him not liking his circumstance, to dealing with the rats, to of course almost getting abducted or killed, to finding of course the sword. And now it seems as though the sword is playing with his mind, in my perception. Like he's using it almost like without knowing, like he's putting himself in extra danger, because that whole thing, the idea with getting food, it was a sound plan up until he's trying to do too much. And I was like, it seems like you're putting yourself in a situation to use that thing. But the biggest thing I was going to ask you guys about him, is he being controlled by the sword, by Sauron, or is it that he has a destiny that, because I don't know where he fits. Him fitting doesn't make sense to me. Like where is this character going? I was curious y'all's perspective at this point.
I think his purpose, and some of the other characters like the barkeep, or some of the other, even like his friend who left him, which as he should.
Smart guy.
I was actually low-key happy that he made it, because I was worried. I actually was worried, even though he was a jerk in the first episode. I'm like, at least he managed to follow the light
right
back to the watchtower. And it's ironic that that's their haven, considering how they were so like against the elves being there. Now, what if the elves were there? They could have probably had rations and maybe even more of a chance to survive than them getting wiped out, unfortunately. So it's just funny that that's not. They probably not even thinking about that. I think at the time they're just trying to survive, which is fine. But I think they're representing the temptation of man in a general sense, and unfortunately, he is a kid that will probably get corrupted. Who knows if he'll ever be saved by the love of his mama, or just him, finally realizing that it's just not worth it. But they're coming for that sword. So
yeah, because I can't remember exactly what the old man said, but in so many words, the old man had been using the sword the same exact way. Because he had marks on his arms, just like Theo. And he was like, prepare yourself, yada yada. I couldn't remember exactly what he said, but Ty, what was your take on that one?
Theo is basically Frodo at this point for me. Instead of this being cast upon him, though, this ring, that eventually over time starts to corrupt him and needs, Samwise to kind of free him of it to a certain extent. Well, Samwise and Gollum, but you start to see that with him. I do agree about the daddy issues. He needs to take his mama to paternity court and let Judge Lake help him find his daddy. But I think also him being a child, he's trying to find himself, but he's also dealing with some things that I think a father figure would help him navigate through. Yeah. And this hilt that he found, he's basically acting up until this episode. He's basically acted like he and nobody else ain't ever had this thing before. And yet it's giving him abilities and power that I guess is making him feel like he's becoming somebody. It's his precious, if you will, So I think, and this is actually the one thing about the Rings of Power that honestly I'll say so far I don't like. And don't get me wrong, I love the series, but what I don't like is there are too many characters that are remnants of the Lord of the Rings. And even though it's sometimes it's very subtle, there are other characters that are basically, well, this isn't Frodo, but it's Frodo, right? This isn't Aragorn, it's Halbrand, But we, and then, we've got our Elrond, we've got our Galadriel, this isn't Gimli, it's Durin, this isn't Legolas, it's Arondir, and then we've got, this isn't Aragorn and Liv Tyler's character, it's Arundel and this woman from the Southlands, his mother. Like, this is kind of what we're seeing, and it's like, this is actually the one thing I really don't like about the Rings of Power. But to Theo is going to go through this process. He's going to maybe come close to being corrupted, because this hilt, we don't really know much about this hilt. But I think at the end of the day, he may be saved or he may not, because, as we've discovered with the map of these Southlands, we know what we're looking at. Yep. We know what happens. We know what the Southlands eventually become. So does he make it? Does he not? It would be great to see him make it. But I think if he makes it, he becomes this series' Frodo, right? And I want to see what happens, but I don't know. I don't really have much feelings for this, except I'm looking at a Lord of the Rings character that I've already seen.
Yeah, I think me and Nat had a conversation about this last episode. And for me, it's kind of like, again, I haven't watched those movies in so long. I've never even watched the extended versions of them. So it's kind of like when you have characters that, what's the word? They're literally in the same exact bloodlines. I think you're going to run that risk no matter what. Like, you're going to try to find, the perception is you're going to try to find connections with it. There are certain subtleties that definitely, I think they take luxuries with, but I don't see it as like it's a direct carbon copy, because the reality is, if I looked at Theo the same way I looked at Frodo, I would look at it. Theo is already rash, harsh. He's got a chip on his shoulder. Like, if anything, I look at him as a corrupted version of Frodo. I don't see him having the good outcome in any way, shape, or form. I see him ending up on the other side. I'm not gonna say he's gonna end up like whatever Adar is, but I could see it happening, to be honest with you. And like I said to Nat, I was kind of like, with these characters, I don't really see those connections because I'm not really kind of looking for them. It's just more so like I'm looking at it as though like this is the beginning stages of where this is expanding, because I don't think any of these characters are gonna, well, some of them are gonna make it. Two of the characters we know for a fact are gonna make it, but the rest of them, you know, where their story ends is going to be the most interesting, promising thing, because by the time we get to a second season, what are their legacies? Where are their characters really actually growing? Are they going to end up on the right side, or are they going to live up to the left side? We really don't know, and I think that's part of the thing that intrigues me about the show, because I really don't know.
Yeah, all right. I hope, and that's kind of the thing, that some of the folks that they're focused on, we know what's going to happen. We know who's going to survive, at least some of the key characters. We even know who's not going to survive, you know, and this also leads to why I said before, we need that Aragorn series, because we need to know we're watching this whole series, and some of the key folks that we're seeing in the last 2 episodes, we already know what's going to happen to them. We already do. So where's the payoff, you know? I definitely want to see how it all ends, but we kind of already know. I'm interested more in the folks that we've never seen before at this point. And I'm not looking for the connections. The problem is that the connections are just too easy to spot. Like they're just too easy. You throw Galadriel and Elrond out the door, and you look at everybody else and throw Elendil and Isildur out the door, because you know what happens to them. But you're looking at everybody else and you're like, okay, the guy from the stars could be Gandalf. You know, Doran could be Gimli. You know what I mean? We've got some of the men in Numenor that are talking. Some of the folks of the Southlands could be Sean Bean's character. Like you can't really kind of get away from it, you know. And like with Theo, who's going to be Theo Samwise Gamgee? Because he's not going to get out of that by himself, if he even gets out of it at all. You know, Pippin and the rest, those are Isildur's guys. You know, those are Isildur's boys. You know, those are your hobbits right there. They're just men. It's just too easy. It's just way too easy. You know, they have different attitudes and how they carry themselves, but you look at some of these folks and you're just like, you know, who's gonna ride with me to help protect the queen, and who should speak up? Isildur and his boys, Frodo and his hobbit boys. You know what I mean? It's just way too much. It's way too easy to spot. I don't care how you salt and pepper it around particular people, you can just pick up on those things.
It's funny that we didn't see Nori and Co in this episode, but something tells me we're going to get them in the next episode. I think it's interesting that they're kind of like taking a break on some story arcs and focusing on others. Like last week, we didn't see where Bronwyn and Theo were, but we saw them this week. And fortunately, they caught up with Arondir. And so it's just going to be really interesting to see when eventually all of these characters kind of come together. I still don't know the purpose of the sister, other than just her connection to Isildur and Elendil. I don't know the Isildur's sister.
Oh, the captain's daughter.
Yeah, Arwen.
Arwen. It's Isildur's sister. It's Isildur's sister, basically.
Yeah. So I don't even know where her story arc is going to go unless she happens to be there when, you know, the tidal wave comes and destroys Numenor. I mean
And actually, she's the one I'm most interested in, because she's not in the books at all. She's a whole new character for this series. So she's probably the one I'm most interested in. They're kind of flying her under the radar.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like she got a potential love story But as far as her role in the city, maybe she's the one that discovers the queen's secret. So maybe that's her purpose. And what does she do with that information? I mean, that could be an interesting arc for her. I can see where she could be the one that actually makes sure that Numarians survive this tragedy. That would be cool to see, actually. So while the queen is off fighting, she's there to kind of be the forewarning of the people about this tragic thing that's going to happen. So I think we're pretty good as far as we discussed most of everything that happened in this episode. I feel like there's not much we didn't touch on, guys.
We touched on pretty much everything. I think the only thing that hasn't happened yet, that based on the trailers, is Balrog and then Eminem here. We don't know who he is, or when he's coming.
My name is Slim Shade.
And I think that'll be interesting to see where he's in connection with any of this. But yeah, I it's another good episode. Like I've been enjoying myself going through it, and I think that one of the things that's interesting is I have to catch myself even with the House of the Dragon is not, looking at it like, oh man, I know where this is going kind of thing. I'm like, all right, I'm enjoying the ride. Like it's cool. And I'm kind of doing that balancing act with both of these series actually. So yeah.
I love how you mentioned House of the Dragon on here, and then you mentioned Rings of Power on House of Dragon.
Always.
It's all connected. He connects it all, man.
Always. Like
he ties all the lines.
If you're interested, I'm gonna post this up here.
Here we go. He's recruiting.
We're talking about having on Saturdays a back and forth. It's not about debating what show is better or whatnot. It's more so about like what's happening in the shows and going back and forth about like the push and pull, the good, the bad, how they're progressing, what we're excited for, and we're all collectively talking about because we're all watching it together. And so I think it's a really good riff. I'm just pitching the show. I don't know what to call it.
Besides Theater 3000.
I don't know what to call it.
Okay, so for the record, I really wanted it to be like at the season's end. Just for the record, I wouldn't mind that discussion, but I don't know if we can do every week, Sam. I mean, you got a lot of stuff happening, sir. So I mean, realistically, let's just shoot for the end of the seasons for both of them.
Well, by the end of the season, ain't nobody gonna care because either one of the seasons is gonna piss somebody off, or two, like it's gonna be a huge divide. I'd rather. How about this midway? When we get to the 5th episode of both seasons.
Well, we're already at the 5th episode this coming Sunday for House of Dragon.
Okay, cool. It's a great time then. Let's do it.
I mean, I can't do it this Saturday, but I'm definitely down. I'm definitely down after that. So I've got this Saturday, and then I've got the first Saturday in October where I can't do it, but I'm definitely second Saturday in October I can't do it, but I'm definitely down. And honestly, out of both of these series, I'll say it right now, the only thing that I am concerned about when it comes to House of the Dragon is episode 9. If they don't keep that episode 9 tradition, I don't care what happens, I am going to freaking lose it. There better be some Reigns of Castamere level type stuff in episode 9 of House of the Dragon. That's all I'm looking for. They best to come with it.
You know what? That's interesting because, and see, this is why we need to have this show, Nat. Because now I'm thinking about this show, like in the budget of this show, they got to have a big battle sequence. So that's an interesting thought. Like, when are they really gonna like flex? When are both shows really gonna flex what they're capable of? I think, to be fair, House of the Dragon, the next episode is gonna be really exciting. Because that's the transition episode from a time jump standpoint.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But yeah, we're here to talk about the Lord of the Rings, so we're gonna keep it there. It's just a little bit of taste. See, y'all like that, right? We had an open conversation. It was civil, and we're exciting everybody about what's gonna happen. So, anywho, I guess we're gonna go. Nat, you want to close out?
All right. Well, you can follow me and follow Sam over here at TeamJVS. So where can people find you, sir?
You can find me right now on the gram, as you see right there, at Ty Nitty, TYNIDDY at the NY, change DC for the degree. Now you can find me in MD. Holla at your boy. That's where I'm at right now. But Instagram at Ty Nitty right now.
All right, sir.
More to come.
All right. We'll be back next week. Who knows? You'll be probably seeing us more to discuss both shows. But
you heard it here first,
time.
y'all.
Falling out the top of
I can see skyline, 50 mile radius on my timeline. Ain't